If you have watched the news, read the papers, or used any kind of social media within the last few years, you will have noticed a trend which has been increasing rapidly with unlimited capacity. Everyone is getting offended by everything. There is an expanding number of ultra-politically correct, far-left militants, and this is far more than just a political problem. This is about the indoctrination of the youth, including my generation, but especially younger children, and the silencing of anyone who disagrees with the insane agenda of the left. Our free speech is in jeopardy, and unless we act fast, the future is not bright for anyone who is intelligent enough to realize that left-wing ideology is based on pure insanity. And no, this is not an exaggeration. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, let me give an example. Nadal Malik Hassan is a former US Army major who gunned down 13 fellow soldiers, including 30 more while shouting "God is great." This shooting, however, was preventable. It turns out the Pentagon knew all about Nadal's intentions, and could see his emails with other radical Muslims stating his intentions. But the Pentagon would not step in and arrest Nadal, because they were too afraid of being seen as racially profiling him and being seen as racist. So because of extreme political correctness, 13 soldiers had to die. This is a prime example of the power that this new movement of politically correct, ultra-woke people have. A less extreme example of this is the fact that Fallon Fox, a male MMA fighter who has the belief that he is a woman, was allowed to fight in the UFC women's featherweight division. He dominated it, as expected for a man with naturally bigger muscles, a bigger heart and denser bones. He even fractured one of his opponent's skulls, and then claimed that it was harder for him to fight as he was trans. In effect, a man was seen as a hero by the trans community for beating up women. Putting the lives of female fighters at risk and making all women's sports unfair is just one of the agendas that this new movement is pushing. Joe Biden has recently chosen Rachel Levine to be the new health secretary. To be blunt, an overweight male who thinks he's a woman has been chosen to be the assistant secretary of health for the US. Levine is now pushing the trans agenda. He wants to make it as easy as possible for kids of any age to change their gender and undergo chemical castration. This is a life-altering decision, and he wants young children whose brains are far from being developed to make a decision which will ruin the rest of their life, potentially. A study of 25 children who claim to have gender dysphoria showed that only 3 out of the 25 in the study continue to be transgender into adulthood. Furthermore, the American College of Pediatricians reports that 80 to 90% of adolescents with gender dysphoria will experience resolution by adulthood without social or medical intervention. Without intervention. Dr. Levine fundamentally wants to make intervening with the decisions of these minors easier to do. By doing this, Dr. Levine is setting a highly dangerous precedent. He was grilled by Paul Rand, a US senator, on this issue. Paul asked Levine if he thought minors were capable of making a decision on whether they wanted to be chemically castrated. Levine repeatedly dodged the important question and simply answered,
Well, Senator, thank you for your interest in this question. Transgender medicine is a very complex and nuanced field with robust research and standards of care that have been developed. And if I am fortunate enough to be confirmed as the Assistant Secretary of Health, I would look forward to working with you and your office and coming to your office and discussing the particulars of the standards of care for transgender medicine.
The specific question was about minors. Let's be a little more specific since you evaded the question. Do you support the government intervening to override the parent's consent to give a child puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and/or amputation surgery of breasts and genitalia? You have said that you're willing to accelerate the protocols for street kids. I'm alarmed that poor kids with no parents who are homeless and distraught, you would just go through this and allow that to happen to a minor.
Levine gave this answer multiple times, almost word for word, and refused to answer the question about minors. And yet, after this appalling performance from Levine, he was still appointed as the Assistant Secretary of Health. This shows the growing power of the left, and the main problem is if you disagree with any of this, you'll be labelled as a bigot. If you call BLM violent, you'll be labelled as a racist. If you go into some violent black neighbourhood and hold up an All Lives Matter sign, you'll probably be assaulted. And you'll be told that if you think BLM's violent, you don't care about racism. If you disagree with the fact that children are given the option to have their genitals mutilated, the left will label you as transphobic. I myself have experienced this. At my school multiple times I've gotten into trouble and been threatened by the school because of my views on the transgender movement. I am not transphobic, and I do not hate trans people, but I sincerely hate a lot of their aims. The danger of this movement is that they will not allow you to argue with them. Free speech will be abolished in order to make sure that no one is offended. Fyodor Dostoevsky, a Russian novelist, once said, Tolerance will reach such a level that intelligent people will be banned from thinking so as not to offend the imbeciles. And he could not have been more right. Cities in both England and Ireland have banned the word brainstorming from use at various government agencies, asking their employees instead to use the term thought showers, because they feel the word could offend those with mental illness and epilepsy. Yet another example of extreme political correctness affecting free speech and the way we think. I mentioned at the start of this speech that the left are indoctrinating the youth. Drag queens are being allowed to read at libraries to young, impressionable kids and being praised for it, even if it goes horribly wrong. A drag queen was reading in the Ridgedale Public Library in Minnetonka. The drag queen, who called himself Sasha Sota, walked in with high heels, a pink skirt, and a shirt that exposed his midsection. According to an attendee, the drag queen strode suggestively past the children and sat down in a chair with several preschool girls sitting right in front of him, with an exposed, nylon-covered crotch to all the children who were sitting at eye level. The fact that the left are pushing this to happen more and more gives paedophiles an opportunity and can scar their children for life. Drag queens dress in a highly sexual way, and to present them to young children is completely immoral. And yet, if you protest against this, you'll be shouted down by the left and forced into silence. So what is my point? Well, I have a problem with the left and its dangerous agenda. If we don't act fast and fight against cancel culture and extreme political correctness, then woke politicians will soon begin to infiltrate the system, which is actually already happening, and before we know it, there will be laws against free speech, such as making it illegal to use the wrong pronouns for a trans person, and it will also be illegal to hold the belief that women cannot be men and men cannot be women. All social norms will be forgotten, and the world will fall into insanity. Biology will be out the window. It is important to have a moral and social constructs, because those are what keep society sane. If they were to be removed completely, then the world would be a very dangerous place for young children, and anyone who disagrees with the government. Yes, I do think some social constructs are bad, such as the opinion that women are only meant to be housewives and should strive to get married, but those have fast faded away, and now the left is seeking to remove much more fundamental social constructs in order to eradicate anything deemed offensive and to benefit the minority. There is a reason schools have uniform codes and posh restaurants have dress codes, and there is a reason why we don't all walk around naked. So I implore you that the next time you notice someone on the left forcing their oppressive agenda, or a system forcing ideas and eliminating free speech, do not be afraid to speak out against it, because unless we begin to question and argue against them, they cannot be stopped. And soon, freedom of thought and free speech will be objects of the past.